In the Finger Lakes region of western New York, the breathtaking Taughannock Falls has drawn in tourists for over 150 years. Our story takes place near the falls in the summer of 1879. On a hot summer day, local workers were busy widening a carriage path that led through the woods and up to the popular Taughannock House Hotel. The work was going smoothly until one of the workers' shovels hit something. At first they thought it was a rock, but as they dug more, it became apparent that this was something far out of the ordinary. Shocked at what they had discovered, the workers ran to tell what had happened. Soon, the news had spread like wildfire of the discovery of the ancient, petrified remains of a humanoid, the Taughannock Giant.
Hello and welcome to These Haunted Trails. We are Jarrett
And Jimmy.
two brothers who explore trails of the natural world and the supernatural tales and legends that surround them. This week we're exploring Taughannock Falls and the local legend of the Taughannock Giant. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, in case you were wondering about the pronunciation, think don't panic, it's Taughannock. A short drive from Ithaca, New York, right along the western edge of Cayuga Lake, the falls are a favorite spot for tourists and locals alike. The trail itself is cool enough, following the cliff through the woods and ending in the view of the falls, with its 215-foot drop into a massive gorge. But we're also going to explore the legend of the petrified giant discovered there, who came to be known as the Taughannock Giant. Now, Taughannock Falls is a popular spot nowadays, but it was an even hotter destination back in 1879, and the place to be was the Taughannock House Hotel.
It sounds like a nice trail, but why was it so popular?
Well, the hotel was situated right on the rim of the gorge, so it had a breathtaking view of the falls. And it was a popular spot for honeymooners on the way from New York to Niagara Falls. That train route was known as the Honeymoon Express. The hotel was built in 1850 by J.S. Halsey, but by 1879, it was owned by John M. Thompson. Now, getting to the falls wasn't as easy as it is today. To get to the Taughannock Hotel, you had to take a train to Ithaca, then board a steam ferry to get to the shore near the falls. From there, you had to take a stagecoach ride all the way to the upper gorge rim where the hotel was located. It was in the summer of 1879 that some routine maintenance was getting done on the carriage road, and the workers discovered something unusual. The workers were digging in the ground to expand the path, and they hit something hard. Now, this could have just been a rock, but as they began to clear the dirt and uncover the object, they were surprised to find that it was in the shape of a massive humanoid figure. When they finally uncovered the figure, it could only be described as a giant petrified man.
What do you mean? Like a mummy?
Not exactly. The humanoid figure was 7 feet long and over 400 pounds, and it was composed of what appeared to be stone. It had apparently been in the ground for a long time. It showed stains and signs of age, and it was tangled in roots that had grown around it. The workers ran to nearby Trumansburg and up to the hotel to tell everyone what they had found. People were immediately excited by this discovery.
Who wouldn't be?
Right? I mean, a strange figure gets unearthed in your town. Who wouldn't be a little curious? Apparently smelling an opportunity, John M. Thompson threw up a tent around the figure and began charging people 10 cents a person to come get a look at it. Around $2 in today's money. Newspaper reporters eventually caught wind of the story and started writing up articles. Within a few days, a reporter from the New York World, which was a big newspaper in New York at the time, by the way, had arrived on the scene. In his write-up, he describes the Taughannock Giant as follows. He is nearly 7 feet long and was apparently a muscular man, without a superabundance of flesh, but with the muscles, joints, and bones quite prominent. He lies upon his back with his head slightly raised, the right arm following the line of the body, with the hand resting on the right thigh, the left arm crossed over the right, with the right leg crossing the other just below the knee. The forehead slopes back, and the crown is shaped like an ape's. The nose is flat and broad at the end, and the cheekbones are rather low than high. The joints, knees, etc. are very distinct, and the muscles and bones are indicated perfectly. So the petrified giant was making quite a splash. But not everyone was entirely convinced of its authenticity, and quite understandably. Some students and professors from nearby Cornell decided to try to test some samples from the giant.
Was Thompson upset about that?
No, apparently he was happy to provide the samples. The students and professors chipped away some samples from the behemoth and took it back to campus to try out some tests on him. Despite their best efforts, though, their tests were inconclusive. The results were, and I quote, decidedly mixed. So, in spite of any skepticism, for months following the discovery, tourists flocked in to see the giant that was shocking reporters and baffling scientists. And there was no real explanation of what the giant was or where it came from. I mean, even the professors of Big Red couldn't come up with an answer. Could it really be the petrified remains of a fantastic ancient being?
I'm beginning to wonder if maybe it was.
Well, the answer soon followed, and it was provided by a man named Frank Crick of Trumansburg. Frank was one of the maintenance crew that had found and dug up the giant. One night at a tavern, Frank was having a little bit too much to drink and decided to spill the beans. He knew the giant's origins because he had helped bury it in the first place. The giant and its discovery was all an elaborate hoax put on by John M. Thompson, the owner of the Taughannock House Hotel.
No!
Yes! Thompson had wanted to drum up some business for the hotel, and so approached a local mechanic by the name of Ira Dean. Dean was the one who actually built the giant. He mixed together cement with eggs, beef blood, and iron fillings in a combination that they hoped would mimic actual remains.
That's why the Big Red professors couldn't figure out the composition of the giant.
Dean molded the cement into the shape of a humanoid. From there, Dean, Thompson, and Crick buried the figure where it was sure to be found. They snuck to the spot in the dead of night and dug into the spot sideways, so that it wouldn't look as though it had been buried. To complete the look, they twisted some roots around the head so it would seem as if they had grown there with time.
Had Thompson ever tried a publicity stunt like this before?
Well, a few years previously, he had hired a tightrope walker by the name of Professor Jenkins to walk the Taughannock Gorge.
Wait, Professor Jenkins?
I don't think he was actually a professor of anything. Jenkins made 2 walks across the 1,200-foot span of the gorge, once while blindfolded. But apparently that stunt didn't draw in enough revenue, indicated by the creation of the giant. So, the jig was up. The hoax was exposed. The giant still drew people in for a while, even after it was revealed to be a fake. Ira Dean even had to give a demo of how he made the giant, as some people still refused to believe it was a hoax. Eventually, though, the giant became old news, and the public lost interest. With the excitement over, things at the Taughannock House Hotel went back to normal. Eventually, Thompson ended up selling the hotel, it changed hands a few times, and it burned down in 1922.
So, why a giant? Not something cool like a Demogorgon or a giant Gila monster.
Well, he sort of plagiarized the whole giant thing. It wasn't even really an original idea. Thompson got the idea from the more well-known Cardiff Giant hoax from 10 years earlier. The Cardiff Giant was created by the rich tobacconist Charles Hull. He'd gotten into an argument with a local minister about whether giants had roamed the earth according to the Bible. We've all gotten into an argument with that friend who believes a little bit too out there conspiracy theories, right?
Yeah.
And he decided to stage a hoax. He had the Cardiff Giant carved from a block of gypsum and buried it then to be rediscovered a month later. The prank cost him about $2,600, which is around $53,000 in today's money, which means that Charles Hull officially wins the Most Extra Prank Award.
Well, at least he won something.
The Cardiff Giant gained even more notoriety than the Taughannock Giant. Cardiff even took a countrywide tour. In fact, P.T. Barnum tried to get in on the action. He offered $50,000 to buy it. In the end, Hull came forward and confessed the whole thing, but apparently that wasn't the end of giant hoaxes in America.
So wait, this guy came up with a grift to get people's money, and it wasn't even his original idea? Tell me he at least got in some trouble.
It doesn't appear so. So, back in the day, all you really needed to do is not be there when people realized they'd been swindled. That's kind of how the whole snake oil salesman thing worked. Remember, this was the time of Barnum and Bailey. I looked for any indication of John Thompson after this event, but there doesn't appear to be any. So, for all intents and purposes, he got off scot-free.
So what happened to the Taughannock Giant?
Well, according to some accounts, it eventually got dropped and broken in half, and or buried in a random field in Trumansburg somewhere. Ostensibly, it's still out there waiting to be rediscovered and maybe start the cycle all over again. But you can still see the Taughannock Giant. A replica was recently made in 2019, and it's currently resting comfortably at the Trumansburg Farmers Market. He looks a little pleased with himself at all the trouble his older twin caused all those years ago. You can stop by and say hi to the legend on your way through, just like we did. We'll tell you all about it, but before we head on this hike, let's take a quick coffee break. Jarrett, you know how I like to start my hikes in the morning?
You mean these early morning hikes?
Oh yeah, I need a nice energy boost to get started.
We get our caffeine from Big Nerd Coffee Company, a great local brand with great food and an excellent staff that are always your biggest fans.
That's why they're this episode's sponsor, Big Nerd Coffee Company in Elmira, New York.
Become nerdy every morning and make an order online today. Now let's take a look at our hike in the Taughannock Falls State Park itself. We started the day in the town of Trumansburg, about 10 minutes away from the park. We grabbed some coffee before stopping to see the Taughannock Giant himself. The recreation lays under a small pavilion across the street from the Trumansburg Farmers Market.
Yeah, he seems to be relaxing comfortably and looks a little bit too pleased with himself.
The park is open year-round, from dawn till dusk. We got there in the morning on a nice day in May. We started in the lower parking area, and the park butts right up against the Cayuga Lake, and it has everything you could possibly want. There are pavilions, grills, a seasonal beach for swimming and boat launching, and if you want to stay, there are campsites and cabins available. At this point, you can choose either the Gorge Trail or one of the Rim Trails. The Gorge Trail itself is super easy. This lower trail is open all year round, and it'll take you right up to the gorge and the falls itself. The north and south rim trails connect in a 3-mile loop. They'll give you more of a bird's eye view of the whole Taughannock Falls, but unlike the Gorge Trail, they'll take you past the less famous other falls in the park, and they're only open seasonally.
Now, Jarrett, you have a system for people to judge a hike by, right?
I do have a system for people. This is how I recommend my hikes. 1 through 5 are hikes that take about a day or less, which means you could hike any of these trails in 8 hours or less, with easy hikes being 1 and hard hikes being 5. 6 through 10 are hikes that take more than a day, which means you'll need to spend at least 1 night on the trail before you finish. Keep in mind, there are day hikes that are more difficult than longer hikes that may take 2 days or more.
Yeah, been there.
The Rim Trail was about a 3. Most of the trails are very well kept and easy to traverse. There are spots, especially at the beginning of the hike, that can give you some difficulty.
What do you mean, difficulty?
Well, at the start of the hike, there are some very steep stairs that lead right up to the Rim Trail, and they're made out of blocks of stone. They're uneven and can be slippery when moist. There are also some end parts of the trail that are right on a road and lead right to the entrance of the park.
So, we recommend keeping an eye on your kids and pets.
Yes, especially on the road parts. I usually recommend for people on any of my hikes that if they have small pets or children, be prepared to carry them if need be. Along the trail there are great spots for viewing the gorge. About half-mile in, the trail descends a small set of steps and comes right open to a flat viewing area right next to the gorge. A great photo spot, and there are some benches to take a break. From there, we kept making our way to the South Rim Trail. Now, the South Rim doesn't really offer a great viewing spot for Taughannock Falls.
But don't worry, we'll get there soon.
We continued up the South Rim Trail and reached the end where you cross a bridge across the creek to connect to the North Rim Trail. It's here where you get a nice view of the upper falls. Though smaller than the Taughannock Fall, it's a nice spot to take a breath. We made our way back down the North Rim Trail. About a quarter of a mile down the trail, you'll come across a parking traffic circle. There's a visitor center and plaques showing the history and interesting facts of Taughannock Falls. Reading these, you'll find that this is the location where the Taughannock House Hotel once stood. This is also where you'll find the falls overlook, possibly the best spot to view the falls. Now, we reached the real star of the show, Taughannock Falls itself. The falls drop vertically into a massive bowl-like gorge with cliffs up to 400 feet tall. At 215 feet, the Taughannock Falls are the highest vertical drop falls east of the Rockies. Down below us, the Gorge Trail can take you closer to the base of the falls, right next to the pool of formed water. Just remember, stay on the path, and swimming is strictly prohibited.
Not only is it bad for the park, but swimming under the falls is dangerous.
Across the road, you'll find the entrance to the multi-use trail, which is where we headed. The trail is a 2-mile loop, though a nice, slightly more wooded area. The trails are easy, and the terrain rolls gently. This loop will take you past a sledding hill and a skating pond.
It was way too hot to make use of those today.
But we didn't like the extra tree cover, didn't we?
Oh yeah, that was a huge help.
Yeah, and we also found a toad on that trail too. There was a bit of a debate whether it was a toad or a frog.
We're not exactly the crap brothers over here.
But we did follow the loop all the way back to the falls overlook, and picked up on the North Rim Trail right where we left off. The North Trail is slightly less wooded, and is mostly declining walk. There is no actual record of where the Taughannock Giant was actually buried and, quote, discovered, unquote, but we think that it was probably on this trail, and we walked right over where the Taughannock Giant briefly rested.
In case you're wondering, we didn't find anything this time around.
We did try, and there was the discovery of the maybe frog toad.
I think it's a frog.
It's gotta be a toad. It had bumpy skin. The North Rim Trail has a less scenic overlooks, but heading back offered us an amazing view of the Taughannock Lake. The higher elevation makes for great views. Eventually we reached the end of the trail. I made the choice to skip the steep stone stairs in favor for a longer but less intensely inclined alternate route. This route took us through the campgrounds and allowed an opportunity to pick out a good spot.
I call top bunk.
I get my whole own cabin then. Soon we were back on the trailhead and the hike was done. The whole thing took just over 3 hours, with a bit of stops.
Yeah, it's a nice leisurely walk.
Overall, Taughannock State Park is an easy hike with a 2 difficulty scale, 3 at most if you have children or pets that need to be carried. It is a 1 if you choose the gorge trail. It's a very easy walk. The park is definitely worth a stop. It's a good option for the casual hiker. It's easy to hit Taughannock and have time for other longer hikes that are available all around the area. It's a great little hike with amazing views. There's been no recent sightings of giants in the area, so don't panic. It's Taughannock. We would like to thank you all for listening to these haunted trails. We have many more episodes planned, including trails that are home to ghosts, cryptid legends, and long abandoned ruins.
We on these haunted trails adhere to leave no trace, and we encourage everyone listening to do the same to keep our natural spaces clean and ensure their longevity. Please remember to keep to the marked trails, carry in and carry out, and be respectful of the environment, wildlife, and your fellow hikers. Tread lightly, for where you walk, giants might be sleeping.